So welcome to the first edition of B2B Bites Back, the social media podcast. My name's Luke Bruni-Jones. I'm here with Helen Sharp.
Hi.
And basically we're going to be talking about all things B2B social media. So we've got influencer marketing on our list, employee advocacy, demand gen, creativity in B2B, all the topics that you're thinking about for B2B social. And this is our first podcast, but we're going to be running them every month. So please do subscribe and look out for the next edition. So Helen, why are we doing this?
Good question. I don't know. No, I think, we get asked all the time really kind of top strategic questions from brands. And I think, we do work with a number of B2B tech brands. A lot of things have changed recently with, the mindset shift. People are, B2B brands especially are moving much more into kind of traditional consumer styles of marketing. So I think it's definitely something we've seen a big change in, and it's something I just think is a really good opportunity for us to be talking about now and think about humanising brands, and it's a hot topic.
Thing is that 3 or 4 years ago, B2B brands didn't have their sort of separate strategies at all, and there's a bunch of different strategies I think for B2B that have come through recently, and ironically actually one of them is moving them closer to sort of consumer and humanisation piece as well.
Definitely. And I think a lot of brands, they know what they need to do. There's the theory behind it, they understand it now, but it's actually put it into practice. So hopefully we can help today.
Great. Well, so what are we talking about this month then? This is the first one, so we've got to make it, a splash. What's on the list?
So we're going to start with strategy, because obviously everything starts with the strategy. We're going to look at how COVID has impacted. Little buzzword that's been thrown around. I don't know if you're aware of a global pandemic we've been in recently, but and just thinking about the future. So how does the landscape look going forward for the rest of the year and 2022 and even further as well?
Yeah, well, we need to look into the future, always looking to the future. So we've also got, I will say, some guest speakers.
Yes, we do.
Bian Salins, who is Head of Content and Creative at LinkedIn, Creative Consulting, I should say, for EMEA and LATAM. She's one of the smartest people I know about B2B social, so we're going to interview her. We've also got a short session with Anita Vaselli, who's Head of Social from Ericsson. So it's going to give us a bit of a case study in how they've dealt with the pandemic and kind of got through that period. So it should be really fast.
Yeah, great. Excited. Shall we kick off?
Go on then, let's kick off.
All
let's
right.
do it.
Let's talk about B2B social trends then for the rest of this year and into next year and possibly beyond.
Okay, what's your hot topic then?
So I think the one thing that, a really big thing at the moment is thinking about brand positioning. So brands in general, I think, really need to be assessing where they are in the market. How do they fit with their customer base? What's their differentiator? How do they stand out? And I think it really comes down to storytelling. So, your story is your strategy, essentially. I think that's a hot topic. We're seeing a lot of it come through with brands now. We're having loads of conversations with our clients about really having this kind of moving away from product-focused campaigns right into brand-level stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. And my sort of, the thing that spins off that a little bit is sort of integrated advocacy, which is something I talk about a lot if you've heard me on DigiConf and other events we've been doing. And this idea of sort of, taking your brand story, but then putting it through the voices of different people. So your employees, your senior execs, your influencers, partners and customers, and getting them involved. And if you can, finding the sort of holy grail of a sort of collective conversation where you get the credibility, the reach, all of those sort of good factors come together to really amplify your brand.
So powerful. I think as well, just on that, having your CEO, for example, aligned with your key messages as a brand, super
Maybe doing
powerful.
a podcast.
Maybe doing a podcast, yeah.
Who knows?
Community. Yeah, so I think that follows on nicely from your thing. But just, really amplifying messages, getting the most out of, who are you talking to? How can you involve your community? I think brands like Salesforce, Tableau do it really, really well. They have ambassadors. They do things with them like they have product demos that are exclusive that they can get in on first, and all these different things they reward them with, and it gets them engaged with the brand. They help amplify all their campaigns, the key messages. They're very aligned in terms of their values. It's just a very natural partnership to involve your community, and obviously once you've got this engaged community, you can make magic.
It's sort of empowering your customers to get involved, and something I always say to our clients is, where's the conversation in that? How are you drawing your customers into your social channels and content? So, and I think the same applies to staff. And so, I mentioned earlier that sort of integrated advocacy approach. I think employee advocacy, which started out a few years ago as, get yourself an app, get your staff sharing your content regularly, that's now switched to employee empowerment.
Yeah.
Helping their staff to use social, they're training them, empowering them, understanding what they want, rather than just getting them to share company messages.
I think so, and I think that so much more authentic, and it's giving them a platform as well, so it's building up their personal brands, which is only going to strengthen the overall brand of the company.
I have a quote, you see, excuse the paper guys, but anyway.
So this is from the Journal of Product and Brand Management in 2020. What they said was, brand consistent behaviour, where employees' social media activities align with their employer's values, has the biggest impact on brand equity, as opposed to brand allegiance and brand endorsement.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and I think, at the end of the day, yes, we're talking about B2B marketing, but then this idea of much more humanised, we're talking to people. People are so much more ethically conscious than they've ever been. They want to have, they want to engage with brands that share the values. They want to engage the employees of the brands that share those values. So it's super, super important.
Yeah, and that comes all the way back to storytelling as well, doesn't it? This
does,
whole idea of, getting the brand story out there.
Yeah.
One of our first guest speakers I'm going to introduce, so should we watch the video?
Yes, please.
Bian Salins, who is Head of Content Creative Consulting for EMEA and LATAM at LinkedIn. Welcome, Bian.
Hi, Luke. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, so what we're looking at the moment is B2B social strategies. That's the real focus for us today. So from your perspective, what do you think's changed over the past couple of years? And obviously we've got the pandemic right in the middle of that. Do you discern any changes on LinkedIn and B2B strategy?
Yeah, I've been at LinkedIn now for 2.5 years, and actually I've seen a tremendous shift on the platform. I think first of all, we've seen content really become the core, of how people consume and how people come to our platform. I think people are still investing their time on the platform rather than passing their time, and so the value of that content is really important. Some phenomenal shifts that my team monitored all through COVID, and of course our customers, were impacted. So we had to lean in as a team and help them recover from where they were, and help them shape how they would leverage their strategies as a whole, rather than just a platform-specific strategy.
Yeah. And can I ask as well? I mean, when you say about content, I mean, is it different formats of content, different types of content?
Yes, definitely.
Kind of thing that we felt.
I think a few things around content. Like I would say, the first thing we've seen is more native type content, which I think is a positive shift for us. I think for too long, B2B marketing has been very corporate. And I think, brands are willing to experiment, and they needed to be human at a time when actually the only thing that mattered was being human. So by a lot of encouragement, I don't think every brand is there yet, but with a lot of encouragement, we've started to see that shift of native content on the platform. So that's one trend. The second trend is I've definitely seen a lot more balance in brand and demand. As you know, B2B marketing, they typically have been very product focused. And they've been very lower funnel focused. I think really, chasing the leads it has been too much of an obsession in B2B marketing, if I may say. We launched a think tank, which also sits in this new organization. And we did a piece of research with Les Bennett and Peter Field, who wrote the long and short of it. And they applied that research to B2B marketing. And we've seen that the balance of brand and demand is not that fundamentally different, a slight pivot to demand. So it's refreshing for us to see that actually B2B marketers are finally beginning to understand the importance of doing brand and demand, because you typically get some people either focusing on demand, only on demand, and that's the majority of B2B marketers, or you find few people focusing only on brand and forgetting the rest of the funnel. So you do both, and we've definitely seen that shift. And the third one that I'd probably call out, which is a COVID specific one, is B2B marketing has been very face to face. If you think about it, because a lot of it was relationship building, and it was always done in a face-to-face way. And this came with face-to-face events largely,
Sure.
And we have seen this huge pivot towards a digital first sort of mindset and transformation that is still ongoing. So even with things like live streaming, we saw a 400% increase, over the last 12 months. So you can imagine that B2B marketers are finally kind of understanding that digital has a much bigger opportunity than just sort of, broadcasting their message.
All right, I'm going to move us on. So if there was one untapped opportunity for B2B on social at the moment, what would you think it is?
So I'm really going to start with the basics, and as I say, brilliant basics. And I'm really going to say the biggest untapped opportunity still is creativity. And I don't just mean creativity in terms of formats. When we think about creativity, automatically as clients, we tend to think, oh, should I go stories? Should I do, should I do sort of video? I think it's about creativity in your strategy, first of all. How can you actually think differently about how you bring your brand to the table? And then really starting to think about your message, because your message, even if you have the most exciting format, if your message is dull, boring, does not transfer value, does not make somebody else's job better or day better, it's not going to land. So creativity in your message, and then really the containers that you then deliver that message, but I still think that how you bring that message to life and creativity is the biggest untapped opportunity.
Yeah, it's an interesting description, the containers, and I mean, it does bring down the formats to their, knock them down to size, doesn't it? Because we always talk about that. We talk about, you've got to do more video, you've got to do more live, but it is just the container, and the message is what matters.
Absolutely, Luke, and I think people forget that, right? Like we focus on that, the delivery mechanism, and we forget that actually, you could have the best Christmas gift package ever, but if you unwrap it and what's not great, if there's nothing great inside, then it's not going to last long. So
that's it.
Yeah, marketers have to think. There are a couple of other things I want to call out though on that question. The second one that I think is an opportunity is influencer marketing. And I do feel that what we've seen is that people think about influencer marketing in two different ways. But I think in the B2B world, influencer marketing has taken more of a route of thought leadership, and I see that as broadening out a little bit. I see it based on influencers who have credibility, but rather than just focusing on thought leadership, focusing on actually somebody, social proof. Because ultimately B2B marketing is founded on social proof, and we're not leveraging this opportunity of building that word of mouth through influencer marketing. So I think there are two angles there, really. The power of your own people and becoming thought leaders, but really using influencers and the credibility they have from their experience in B2B to be able to sort of leverage that social proof. So those are the two ones that I want to call out as opportunities.
So Bien, what's your, you talked about social strategy and the different elements that are important at the moment. What's your sort of top tip that you want to leave people with in terms of what they should be thinking about for their ongoing strategy? Where should they start? What should they focus on?
So I wanted to kind of go back to what I've always said through my career, Luke, and you may have heard this phrase many times over, given the length of our relationship. But I really want to just remind people that social is one, still a lens into your own organization. And so if you want to be connected through the funnel externally, you have to start from the inside and connect the dots internally. The biggest challenge people have with their marketing, and we know only 5% of content, for example, drives 90% of customer engagements. That means, most of the content that's out there is actually having no impact at all. And the reason I think it's having no impact is, one, as I said, people aren't audience focused. They lack that sort of concept of creativity to their strategy and coming to how they show up. But fundamentally, it's also because the message is fragmented and different parts of the organization are sort of sharing different messages that don't all ladder up to a single truth. And so, connect internally would be my one thing. I think there's also an element of marketing teams are changing, and marketing teams have to change for the future. And I don't mean by marketing teams staying exactly the same, but just doing things differently. You have to relook at the skills that you have for the world that we have shifted into in the last 12 to 18 months and where we will stay for a long, long time to come. And so what are the skills and infrastructure that you need currently within your organization that will empower you to be able to drive for those better outcomes, and that could be that actually, you reshape your organization so sales and marketing are joined up. That could be that actually creativity becomes a core skill and capability within your organization. You have to decide for what works for your organization, but fundamentally, marketing teams need to be relooked at and shaped for where we are now in our digital transformation and where we will stay for a long time to come.
Absolutely. So joining up the dots internally, making sure you've got your stories right, but then also making sure you've got the right people to tell those stories in the most creative ways.
Yes,
I get it.
absolutely.
Okay. Fantastic. Look, thanks, Bian, for your time. It's wonderful as always, and thank you for joining us on the first edition of B2B Bites Back. And we'll hope to have you back as we do more of these sessions.
Thank you, Luke. I've really enjoyed it.
Me too.
Brilliant. I love that from Bian, and I think actually she mentioned events, which is something we haven't even spoken about yet.
Crazy.
I don't know how we forgot that.
Yeah.
But it's huge, and historically, she's absolutely right. Salespeople have relied on in-person interactions, and events have been such a great opportunity. But obviously, with everyone remote, that's not been possible.
That's it.
Yeah, so we've seen obviously digital events being a huge thing. We have Teams, we have all these different webinar platforms. We get this kind of fatigue of staring at the screen. So I think, what does the future look like moving forward? I think, there's this kind of hybrid model that's being thrown around at the moment. We're seeing it with some events that we've got coming up for clients. How can we combine the two? So how can we, combine physical, in-person events, because people miss those interactions, but then also have the digital aspect.
And the thing I was going to throw in is that the salespeople in particular, they're the guys who really, really miss it. So I saw a stat that I think 70% of salespeople have seen their leads dry up because their face-to-face events have not happened. So we've not been able to do that. So I think there's a real opportunity for marketing and digital to step into that gap and support them. And we actually had, about it, a client of ours come through a few months ago and say, right, can you help us run some virtual events on LinkedIn? So we ran a series of LinkedIn Live events for a company in the sort of finance sector that hadn't done that kind of thing before. And I think that was fascinating for them to do that. It was entirely within the LinkedIn ecosystem, entirely to support their sales teams. And we've not really seen that kind of thing happening before. But you can outdo me, can't you? You've got another case study.
Yes, I can outdo you, Luke. So the team and I worked on, I think it was the start of this year actually, a 24-hour live stream. So we had 24 live streams on the hour, every hour, across multiple time zones. Very specific topics as well, and we pulled in influencers, internal stakeholders, really building up the thought leadership for the brand.
And I saw the quote from the client who described it as a wild idea.
Yes,
which is always a good thing to have, from a client, I think.
But it was great, and I think it really demonstrated how the digital landscape's evolved, and people people are willing to watch stuff online. And also you have to think about the people that couldn't always attend in-person events, you know, the accessibility and things, and the expense sometimes as well.
Exactly, and I want to take us on to another thing that Bian mentioned, which was this idea around sort of creativity and the shift towards native. And I do think, I kind of just mentioned it, but I think the idea that before B2B brands were all about taking you off channel as quick as they could, getting you off onto their website, lead gen, demand gen, whereas now keeping you in channel, driving that conversation there has become the priority. And that quote of hers about, you know, being human when you know, being human was all that mattered. You know, COVID has driven us in channel into native communications. I think it's really powerful.
And I think we crave that. You know, we crave those meaningful connections. It's something we talk about all the time. And I think, you know, when brands aren't human and they're very much about the hard sell, people aren't stupid. They see through all that, and they just want, you know, they want to talk to a genuine person. They don't want to be sold at. Yeah,
and it's the rise. She also mentioned, actually, didn't she, the rise of sort of brand versus demand gen, and they're seeing at LinkedIn a sort of evening up of that. It used to be all about demand gen, and now you're seeing brand coming through, which is the human side of B2B.
Exactly, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, kind of around the brand positioning, and you know, things aren't static. Your strategy should never be static, and I think constantly reviewing things. You know, the market changes, the landscape changes, your team changes. So many things change. Your audience needs, customer needs, everything is going to change. So you have to be moving.
That's it.
With the time.
And that's the last point. One of the last points you mentioned was the team structure changes. So talking about, you know, are you looking at with this the need to join your messaging up and have it end to end? You know, sales and marketing coming together. And getting that absolute fluidity between the teams being so essential.
So important. And I think, you know, we work with a lot of brands, and it's that kind of cross-functional working and having, you know, people from internal comms working alongside marketing and really having that, you know, like you were saying, it's that key message, but it's that consistent messaging. And I think actually Salesforce do that really well. They, you know, they say something, you know, once, twice, they put it out there, and then people just get it and they know it because it's across all channels at every touch point. And, you know, we know B2B marketing, there's numerous touch points before a sale's made. So it's having that consistent message across everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the sort of scaling up side of that as well.
Yeah. Is your team equipped for it? Do you have the talent in-house to be able to say, right, we're going to do this really comprehensive marketing strategy, we're going to implement it. Have we got the right resources in place? Because a lot of times people kind of throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. They don't really have that. And we were talking about it earlier, that kind of long-term planning. You've got to have a long-term view.
Yeah. So that's where our maturity model comes from, doesn't it? So we've got our 3 stages, if you like, that we take brands through, and the third one being, you know, you're a global brand, you're working internationally, you've got localized content.
Yes.
You know, you've got the teams that are joined up, 360 reporting, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where you've got to get to, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, we could talk about this all day.
Should we do that? No, let's not.
We do as a job.
Let's cut it down. Right, I need to take us to our next guest. So, and I've also got another interview with...
You've been around.
I have indeed. Yeah. So I got on my bike, cycled around. I've been to see Anita Vaselli, who's head of social for Ericsson, the international telecoms company.
Yes, yeah, I'm aware of them, yeah.
Good. So, should we watch her video?
Yeah, let's.
Cool.
Anita started by explaining what plans Ericsson had for their social media and the impact that COVID had on them.
I think for the past 5 years, we have been doing our social maturity assessments to really see what are the next steps that we need to take to become a social business. This is also including externally how our audience has experienced the brand, but also internally. It's a huge transformation, changes. We would like to become a social business by 2025, when social is integral part of each part of the organization. The last 2 years has been no different. We had our key focus areas where we knew that those are the most impactful, both internally and externally, reaching our main objectives. Obviously, the past 2 years or 18 months has been challenging, as for all the other brands and for everyone. For 2020, Ericsson also had key focus areas, preparing for B2B live events, in-person events. And when the pandemic hit, everything was upside down. And we really had to pivot and reassess that what is our strategy internally and externally, content, how do we pivot from in real life events to social lives, webinars, hybrid events whenever they became possible.
Anita then highlighted the value of social media monitoring in Ericsson's response to the pandemic.
So listening became quite essential. Social listening is nothing new, but I think in early stages of 2020, it was something that every brand had to do. The pandemic, people have been working from home. Everyone had their different challenges. So it was really, really important to do the listening, whatever content we produce and we share with our audiences that resonates, it's not, it's sensitive, and how we work with it. We have seen really amazing results, also showing that some of our employees who didn't have the option to work home because they are the ones who are building the towers or making sure that all of us could actually work from home and we have mobile coverage, we have internet, how they have been working and what difference they made. And we were really, really proud of them. So we used content pieces that were relevant, timely, and really showcased some of our internal heroes who are there, who are also working for the benefit of all of us.
Anita then quoted the Edelman Trust Barometer and talked about the value of employee advocacy.
Then we also seen, and I mean, this has been a trend for several years, but last year and also this year, the Edelman Trust Barometer constantly shows that brands and marketing messages are less and less trusted. People trust people. And for, I think, the last 8 years, we have been working with employee advocacy, but we have also seen that it's kind of like a revolution since all of us, we didn't have the chance in the last 18 or 24 months to see each other in real life. So most of the conversations were happening on social. And this really accelerated how we think about employee advocacy. And it's not just about repeating or amplifying branded messages, but really enabling our employees, our experts, our sales teams, our executives to become social, to build their own personal brand.
At this point, Anita talked about the value of influencer marketing and how it can work with employee advocacy.
How their advocacy or their influence on social ties back to business objectives, whenever it's sales, whenever it's attracting future talent, whenever it's building trusted relationships, internally and externally at the same time. We've also seen that experts around technological topics, around climate change, have a lot more influence on our customers. And in B2B, influencer marketing is totally different than in B2C. It's not about 2 to 5 tweets, what we pay for, but it's rather about conversations. And I think it was also really important to understand from some of the other research that, for example, Analytica has done, that what influencers or external experts are looking for. And it's really early access to reports, what brands create, access to their experts. And I think this is an amazing opportunity when we can kind of like integrate or marry influencer marketing and employee advocacy. For employees, building their personal brand and talking about their passion topics, whether it's IoT or 5G or future of work, sustainability, or for me, for example, social media. It's really important to have those discussions externally with other experts whenever they are from other brands, they have established themselves. And it really creates a lot more interesting conversation, which is also a lot more trusted.
To wrap up, Anita talked about virtual events and what she calls social live.
So this has been a focus, and we have also seen it internally that from all of the market areas or business areas, this has been quite a demand, and we have seen really, really good impact. Another key element, I think, that is worth to mention as a trend, which has also been there, social lives, and how we include this in our marketing or communication mix. It's also accelerated in the last 18 months. And instead of real life events, B2B and also Ericsson, B2B companies and Ericsson also have to focus, how can we have those and continue these discussions with our customers and also with external experts. So social lives have become quite important. We also have been working in a safe environment when it's a hybrid event or it's a mix of social lives or webinars. And now every other week on Thursdays, Ericsson has a social live. This is one, it's also an amazing opportunity to bring customers, external experts, and combine them or marry them or team them up with internal experts, and they can have those conversations. It's so much more vivid and more interesting for everyone else when different parties with different perspectives talk about the same topic, rather than just the brand telling about their point of view. So I really think that listening, employee advocacy, and influencer marketing, trust content, and social lives have been quite a bit of a focus and accelerated trends in the last 18 months. And I think these will stay, even though that we are opening up and most of us are lucky enough to actually travel or meet in real life. I think these trends will continue. Social will not go away, and how we work with different stakeholders and different groups of people will continuously make the conversations a lot more interesting and more trusted.
That was super insightful. I loved that.
It was incredible, and that case study of hers, the Mobile World Congress one, and we featured it at DigiConf earlier this year.
I was going to say, I recognised it.
Exactly, but I mean, just to be able to flip your strategy like that so quickly and then get such a massive audience, you know, they must have done something really right for that.
Yeah.
So look, we could talk all day, as we've said, but actually we've got to wrap up. So we've got next edition coming in a month's time. It's going to be on influence marketing. So please make sure you tune in for that. We've got Ryan Bars from IBM. He runs their global influencer program. We've also got Jack Parsons, who is CEO of the youth group and also an influencer in his own right. So we're going to be talking to both of them and explaining B2B influencer marketing completely. So please join us, and also make sure you share this with some of your colleagues and friends, because B2B is a small world. We need as many subscribers as we can get. So please do share it with a few people for us. But until then, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So you're watching B2B Bites Back, the podcast from OST Marketing, the global B2B social media agency.